Rome was the most powerful empire of its time. Its legions crushed everyone in their path, and the treasures kept filling up. So what mistake did Rome make that it began to collapse, slowly, without anyone noticing? Between 54 to 68 AD, the most used currency in Rome was the silver denarius. It was the main unit for trade, salary payments, and taxes. The denarius worked smoothly until the reign of Emperor Nero. But Nero had a luxurious lifestyle and built magnificent palace projects. One of them was a massive palace he called the Domus Aurea. Every part of it was covered with gold and precious ornaments, huge halls, gardens, artificial lakes, and statues. Together with endless war expenses, all of this drained the treasury. He found the solution in minting more money, but at the same time, he reduced its value. Around 64 AD, Nero lowered the silver content of the denarius from 98% to 93%. At first, it seemed like an insignificant difference. But did it stay that way? This event is known as one of the first great experiments in inflation in history. For a while, the people didn't notice, but soon, prices began to rise. Salaries started to melt away. Can the fall of an entire empire really begin with a single coin? Between 235 to 284 AD, Rome entered what historians call the crisis of the 3rd century. In just 50 years, 26 emperors changed, almost none of them naturally. Civil wars, assassinations, plagues, and barbarian invasions tore the economy apart. Each new emperor raised soldiers' wages to secure loyalty, and each solved the problem the same way, by reducing the silver in the coins. By 270 AD, the denarius was almost entirely made of copper. Its silvery shine was nothing more than a thin surface coating. The result? Prices increased 20-fold. Trade collapsed. Even soldiers wanted their salaries in goods instead of money. The denarius had turned into a worthless piece of metal. So what happens when an empire loses faith in its own money? Between 284 to 305 AD, Emperor Diocletian came to save the empire from this chaos. In 301 AD, he issued the world's first price control law, the Edict on Maximum Prices. This law set the maximum prices for every product. But an economy cannot be ruled by decree. It was a dagger to the heart of free trade. From bread to wine, everything had a fixed limit. But it didn't work. Merchants hid their goods, black markets appeared, and marketplaces emptied. The people became even poorer. Diocletian tried to fix it by introducing new coins, the Argentius and the Aureus. But by then, the people no longer trusted any coin. The more they tried to control the economy, the more they broke it. As Adam Smith said centuries later, the market should not be interfered with. The invisible hand turns individual interests into collective benefit. But if someone tries to hold that hand, balance is lost. According to Smith, if people produce, sell, and buy freely, the system naturally finds the most efficient point. But when states or powerful institutions intervene too much, that balance collapses. One of the moments Rome began to fall was when that invisible hand was broken. All these events also planted the seeds of feudalism centuries later. As Rome's army grew, so did its expenses. People were crushed under taxes. Farmers became too indebted to even plant crops. In 332 AD, Emperor Constantine made a harsh and unfair decision. every profession will pass from father to son. This was known as occupational slavery. When a blacksmith died, his son had to be a blacksmith too. If a farmer was in debt, that debt was inherited. Rome was no longer a free empire. It had become a state held together by enslaved citizens. This system would later form the foundation of medieval feudalism. In the 400s AD, barbarian invasions cut off trade routes. Gold and silver mines were lost. No new coins could be minted. What lesson does history leave us from Rome's end? By 400 to 476 AD, Rome was no longer expanding. It was struggling to protect a collapsing order. The state began collecting taxes not in coins, but in wheat and livestock. The concept of money had almost vanished. Trade was replaced by barter. Before the empire officially fell, it was already economically dead. The collapse of any system rarely starts from the outside. It begins within. Because no economy stands on money, production, or trade alone, all of it depends on trust. People must believe that the money and the system work. If they don't trust the value of money, no one wants to hold it. Everyone rushes to get rid of it. Prices soar. Inflation explodes. If people don't trust the state or its leaders, they stop investing. Production halts. The economy shrinks. If people don't trust each other, trade stops, and the system collapses. The same happened in Rome. The emperors kept reducing the silver in the denarius, but the people noticed. They began to think, this coin is not the same anymore. Then prices rose, wages fell, and production declined. Once trust in money was gone, Rome's economy began to rot from within. Rome weakened its currency for short-term fixes, ignored inflation, and buried producers in debt. Even today, similar mistakes are made. States print money and chase growth through temporary solutions. But Rome's end reminds us of one thing. The true strength of a system lies not in the money it prints, but in the trust people place in that money and in that system.